In this video, I'm going to talk about whether or not photography is art and maybe which types of photography are art. So I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York. I make videos like this. This one's going to be about philosophy. I make them about gear and technique. So if you're interested in those kind of things, go ahead and subscribe. And let's talk about this. So I made a video last week and was talking about, it's kind of part of a series. So if you're new to the channel, that I'm talking about basically different types of photography that you would make money with. I mean, this is more, it's commercial based in the sense that, you know, how do you break into it? People want to make money with their cameras kind of deal. And I'm kind of breaking it down in different categories of photography, one of which is art. So I did this last week and we talked about it a bit, and it stirred up a decent amount of comments, conversation. I always like that, guys. Thank you for commenting. And there are a few kind of themes that I think kind of went through some of the comments, which I thought were interesting and also got my mind thinking, which one of them was kind of what is art, or what kind of art do I like, or what is art, how do you define art, that kind of thing. And the other one was, should we mix art and money? So I thought I'd talk about those two areas a little bit more in a philosophical sense, since it seems to be an interesting topic. Now, first, I'm going to start off by saying that I think that photography in general is art. Falls into the category of art. So I would say that if I'm making a huge general sweep, I would say all photography is art. That being said, I think people that are art people might consider that some photography is more craft, things that are more commercial based. If you're shooting product on white to sell on the internet, that may be more considered craft. If you're going to separate the two, art and craft. But you still need to understand, light and shadow, composition, color theory, to be good at that kind of stuff. So you're still using artistic tools, even if what you're not creating is for the purpose of art. The other, directly art. The other thing is, when I was creating these categories I was going to talk about, I defined the art photographer as somebody that's doing the photography, producing the photography, and again, for sale. We'll talk about just doing it for yourself in a second, but with the sole purpose of the photography is just beautiful and people want it to display or to be in books and to look at. There's no other real purpose of it, right? So if we look at art in that sense, then of course it's different than just generally. But a lot of people ask me, what art photographers do I look at? I don't look at a lot of art photography, to be honest with you. I mean, I will go into galleries when galleries were open on a regular basis, which, they will be again. And I would look at work because, I like to just kind of get out there and go to galleries and see what's out there. I look at paintings, I look at, sculpture, I look at photography, I look at, mixed media. And I think it's super interesting just to look at, but I don't really follow art photography. It's not something that I do. For me, as far as getting that art fulfillment from photography, I look at photographers that shoot things that I think really skirt the line. People that shoot things like album covers and fashion editorial. I feel like these things fall into a category that's very much like art, in the sense that it's really out there. I mean, it's out there to sell things, clearly, but it's out there to create an emotional response that will make somebody want to look at it longer and know more about it. That's really what editorial is about. It's not about necessarily selling the product on that spot, like, oh, I need a new lens, right? It's more about, wow, that's an amazing, must be an amazing thrill to be, on that, Whitewater Rapids trip, Oh, and if I had this lens, it'd be good. That's kind of the difference, right? It's not this lens is sharp, it's that experience is amazing. So that's where I kind of lean towards for the art that inspires me. If I look at photography for an emotional impact, I look at basically what is commercial art. It's always interested me. I did go to a fine art school, which was interesting because I was really much into the commercial art. That being said, I mean, I love just portraiture for the sense of portraiture, creating beautiful images. I love that type of photography. I like documentary photography on some level, but there aren't any photographers I particularly follow for that. I think that I just kind of I lean towards what I like, and I see. I mean, art that I hang in my house is generally paintings. I have a lot. I have several paintings that I bought from artists that I have hanging in my house. That's more the kind of art that I hang on my wall. I don't really hang photography, but I do believe photography is art, and I see the beauty in it, and I think that's pretty cool for that reason. Now, that's kind of a answering that question. More importantly, or more interestingly, I think for us as a general conversation is, should art and money be on the same table, right? I guess, I mean, there's probably two reasons for this thought, right? It's like, what motivates you, right? There's that idea that like you should be creating art because you're inspired, and that is what makes you do it. And there shouldn't be any, who cares about the money? I do it because I love art, and I get that, right? That's a very romantic notion, and I think maybe some people do that way, and maybe you just do it and you do it for yourself, or you put prints in your house, or maybe you show the occasional friend, but you don't. Those people that do that are generally not going to be the ones that are going to end up selling it on a level, like in gallery shows and stuff, unless somebody else becomes that person that pushes right the thing, which we all wish we had, but they're hard to come by. Usually you got to be your own best salesperson. So if you want to show your work in a way that people can purchase it, whether you want to do it because you need the money, or you want to make a living doing it, or you do it because you just love the idea that like somebody's hanging your work in their house, so you got to sell it to them somehow, right? Somebody you don't know, right? I mean, it's one thing to give it to a family member and they're like, oh, thanks, sir, and hang it up. But I mean, it's another thing when somebody actually plunks down their hard-earned money, or gets it at an auction or whatever, and hangs your photography in their house as a piece of art. It's definitely a different feeling, a different emotion, a different sense of achievement. So there is that, right? There's that idea of like, if you are doing this, because you love it, but you also are doing it because you want other people to love what you're doing, then getting it in front of them is important. And then that's where the kind of the money crosses, right? Because that's one form of showing that it's worth it, right? It's worth it because people are willing to pay for it. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. It's weird. Maybe we shouldn't think like that. I mean, maybe that's a very odd way to think when you think about art. But the reality is that's the case. And if you look at even back through, in more modernish times, all your really famous painters and stuff, they were commissioned to do those things. They didn't just go and paint stuff. A lot of times, I mean, especially medieval and Renaissance art was commissioned by the church. The church had a lot of money. The Catholic Church. I mean, maybe other churches as well, but the Catholic Church especially. That's why so much of that art is religious art, because they were basically paying the bills, right? So that the artists could then also do other things, and then eventually rich patrons and nobles and stuff started doing it as well. And so artists had like a kind of that rich buddy that was just paying for you so you could do your art. And again, we'd all love to have that, but in modern times, it just doesn't happen as often, right? For us, that is the general public, or possibly a museum. The grants are another way that you could do it. I mean, if you're looking at it like that, if you feel like it's odd just to sell it, you could look for grants for photography, where it's like, I have this idea and I want to do it, so you apply for a grant, and whatever the museum or the government or whoever might give you a certain amount of money to do a project, right? And that's how we can involve money in art. I was just watching a documentary about comic book artists, and a couple of things stuck with me, a couple of things that I thought was interesting that they said. One was that one artist kind of jokingly was saying that, well, my style of art is the deadline style, or something to that effect. Like, whatever I can get done by the deadline is my style, because I need to get paid and we work on commission. So I thought that was really interesting, right? It's like, here you go. Here's somebody that does art, right? And I mean, maybe you look down your nose at a comic book, but, whatever. It's art, right? They are drawing and coloring and whatever, and telling stories, and for people to consume, in the same way that writing anything is art. And, clearly this is an accomplished artist, but it's just funny that they kind of look at it that way. They have to think of it that way, right? Even though they're doing it because they love it, clearly, because you would not do it if you didn't love it. Believe me, you would not. You would not be a photographer on any level if you did not love photography, unless you just get really, really lucky. It's a lot of work to be able to make a living as a photographer, and you could make much more money, probably, much easier, doing something else. But if you're passionate about photography, then you want to do it. But then you also want to make money, so this is where it crosses, right? But I thought that was just super interesting how they said that, and I could see that. It's like, as a photographer, like your style, you want to do things, you want to create art, you want to do whatever. But when you need to shoot a headshot for an actor or whatever, then that's the style that you shoot that day because you need to make that money. So there is that compromise, right? That we all need to make, right? When we are artists, when we're creating, it's hard for us to just do just what we want and still be able to make money. So it's always that kind of that balance, right? Hopefully it doesn't get to the point where you're doing so much of what you don't like just to be able to be a photographer that you're not doing the things you love. If that becomes a situation, then you got to make some kind of change. We're doing construction down the street, so trucks keep going by. You don't really want to be in that position, honestly. You may find yourself there for short periods, but if it becomes your regular, then you need to really rethink things. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, too, was that one of the artists was talking about how in order to be, or most artists that are successful are very selfish. And I kind of agree with that. I think that, like, if you are going to be successful as an artist, at least when you're young, even the people that are very nice now when they're older, were probably not so. I'm not saying that they weren't nice. I mean, they were more self-centered and self-focused, because to make a living in art means you really have to believe that you are doing something special. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but to be that person takes a lot of, like, and you've got to be self-centered. You've got to have confidence. Like, you have to believe that what you're doing is important, because, like, yeah, 10 people with cameras, but why are you so special that somebody's going to buy your photos? So it really does come into this idea that, like, we need to believe that we're doing something that's important. And not only is it important that we get it out there, but it's so important that people will pay for it so that we can have more time to do that thing. And that's where the art meets the money. If you don't feel that way, then you're probably going to end up, not being successful as an art photographer, right? You're going to end up doing something else and then doing art on the side. I actually remember that when I was in school, in college, so I went to art school, and even though I wanted to be a commercial photographer, a fashion photographer, most of the students did not. And very much the common dialogue was, well, yeah, I'm going to get a job, at a bookstore, or, because you're at a college or whatever, or a coffee shop, or work in a corporate job or whatever, and then I will do my work, on the weekends and produce art that I love. And they were okay with that, a lot of these people. Now, that wasn't the case. Several people that I graduated with did become more commercial photographers, and including myself. And I think it's interesting. I think they probably realized that you could still love photography even if you're not doing the exact thing that you want to do every single time you pick up the camera. So that is the compromise with the money, You might be like, well, you know what, I enjoy shooting seascapes. We'll go back to if you go back to watch that video, I am living on Cape Cod and I enjoy shooting seascapes of the boats out there, but I know that whenever I shoot pictures of the shells, seashells on the shore, that those sell really well. So I'll go out and shoot some of those too. I'll still enjoy it. It's just not the main thing I want to shoot. But I know that it's going to work for me, and I know that it's profitable. You have to have that, like, little side part of your mind. If you don't have that, or at least somebody telling you, hey, you need to do that, then it will be very difficult for you to be able to make money as an artist. And trying to make a living as an art photographer or an artist in any medium is very difficult. And when I say art, again, people buying the photos just to buy them. It's very, very, very difficult. It's probably, I would say, probably one of the hardest things to break into. I mean, I think you probably have a better chance of getting into the top of the line advertising photography than you do just making money as a fine art photographer. I mean, the same level of money, like being enough money to, like, own a house and have a car and have a family, and like real money, as they say. Because honestly, to be a top of the line advertising photographer you really just, I mean, you need to be skilled, obviously, as a photographer, but That's a lot more, you can utilize business skills to do that, you know? Whereas being an artist, it's all in your gut. Like everything about being an artist is in your gut or in your heart, or however you want to say it. It's all there, like every bit of it. And when you are more commercial, you have these different aspects, right? So when you're not feeling super enthusiastic to create art because you don't have something coming out of you in that moment, you can kind of go through the motions in a sense and still create great commercial work, because commercial work oftentimes falls into, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking every time you throw the shutter, click the shutter, click the shutter. Yeah, that's how people say it, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically all I want to say about that. I mean, I'm curious what you guys have to say about this. I think it's a really interesting topic, and probably one that could be talked about many times, or maybe I'll come back to it. But the idea of where does the art stop and where does the money begin, or vice versa, is really important and really interesting in all forms of art that meet commerce. And photography is probably the most readily available to your average person. You know, most people can pick up a camera, I mean, maybe even their phone, and actually start to make money with it. You know, you can shoot pictures with your phone and make prints of them, whatever, and sell them, or sell them as wallpapers. I mean, you could immediately start selling art type photos with next to nothing, you know, just what most people have. I mean, I'm assuming everybody has a smartphone. That's obviously not true. I do know people that have phones without cameras in them. So, but I'm just saying, you know, your average person, or you could get some kind of inexpensive camera. You don't need a lot to become an art photographer. Whereas, in fact, you don't even really need a lot of training, because with the way digital cameras are these days, especially, like I say, a phone, it will do the technical for you as far as getting a proper exposure and stuff. If you just have a good eye and you can frame up that camera, you can make excellent photos. Whereas if I just threw a canvas down in front of you and a bunch of brushes and paints, chances are you're not going to, without a lot of practice and some training, you're not going to be able to produce a good painting that's sellable. So, you know, it really is one of those types of, and even more so with like sculpture, let's say, right? I mean, to give you a block of marble and a hammer, go ahead, go for it, right? It's not going to happen. So I think that photography is super accessible, and there's probably many people that want to do it and probably can at least dip their toes in the idea of selling an image here and there or getting it shown. And I think that's why this is an important medium for people that want to express themselves artistically, because it's one that's kind of easier to bust into. It's easier to bust into than like painting stuff. But ultimately to become super successful and make a lot of money being an art photographer is, again, probably one of the most difficult aspects. So it's one of those like weird balances, right? Anyways, let me know what you guys think. If you have not already, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell so you get all notifications, and I will see you next time.